Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another patch notes breakdown 9.15. You guys can't see it, but I have a fly right now on my third monitor walking all over Peter. Peter, say hi like the gentleman you are.
I am not Peter, I am the fly.
The plot thickens.
Hello, how's it going at Daedalus? I'm excited to be part of this 9.15 patch notes.
You know what? It's going great. It's 6 minutes past 11 here on Tuesday. I'm going on vacation tomorrow, and I have a passport to find because apparently I packed my passport down in the boxes that I'm using for when I'm moving next week. But you know what? League of Legends has priority, so let's dive into it. First, Evelyn. It's a big patch in terms of champions, but they're not really changing that much because after all, they had I think a massive load coming on to the patch node realm last week, or 2 weeks ago, that is. So, Counterfeit. First up, we do have Evelyn. She's getting her Q cooldown refund on on monsters decreased. So basically, moving from 60% to 50%.
Yeah, I looked into this. Well, I say I looked into this. I let Freak look into this for me.
Ooh.
But apparently, Evelyn is super overpowered at high levels. So I think that's fair. Like, I mean, this is one of the stated intentions for Riot's champion design quite a while back now, was to give them more levers to be able to adjust champion strength without just removing their identity. So, well, for a bad example of this, Aatrox. But yeah, in this case, like...
Do you mean the new reworked Aatrox or the old one?
Oh, well, I mean removing the revive from the new one, which a lot of people saw as iconic, but no, I didn't personally. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, it's not something which I think is going to feel terribly bad.
Nah.
But apparently, if it's a problem, then it makes sense.
Yeah, well, to be fair, like, Evelyn is mana dependent in the early game. So when you just like remove just 10%, that is gonna hit her quite a lot. And I feel like just taking that away obviously means that you have to play differently with Evelyn. It's not a big change, but it's a bit of a change. So overall, I think it's fine. It also means that you're rounding the number down from 60 to 50, and it looks prettier in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, like, the abilities cooldown is 8 seconds. So, yeah, it definitely feels like that's in a world in which it takes, 1 or 2 more seconds to do the same things you would have been doing before in terms of making her ganks and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I like a lot of stuff in this patch is going to be real light touch. So I don't. If she is as strong as was claimed in Freak's video, I'm kind of surprised it is quite as light as that. But I suppose over the course of the game, those extra seconds or so are going to add up into significantly later ganks than they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, they surely will, and it also does mean that, like, for someone like Evelyn, you just bring her down a small bit, kind of. I feel like obviously you can hit champions with the nerf hammer like fast and just be incredibly harsh in terms of nerfing, but you don't need to do that immediately. I feel like sometimes just making those light taps also means that you're gonna have more data to work with moving forward.
Yeah, I personally speaking, I'd be really excited if Evelyn did make it, as we're kind of winding our way towards Worlds patch. Like, I'd love to see Evelyn coming in. If it turns out that she's super broken, still, that might be a little bit of a problem. But there's still, I'm glad this is coming in before playoffs, so that if, we get a chance to see some of this, well, if it's going to happen in competitive, that hopefully it will happen before and not just, be one of those hilarious champions that warps all the worlds around it.
Yeah, like we've seen with what was the pick a few years ago that everyone just banned out straight? It wasn't Mordekaiser in the bottom lane that got like banned for like the first 2 weeks of Worlds or something like that.
Sounds believable. I know there's been a few different champions who've been like that.
Yeah.
Where, like in this case, like, if Evelyn's not seeing competitive play, but someone who figures out how to make it work, suddenly she's, it's a whole different story. So
yeah,
I hope it happens.
Yeah, well, so do I. But let's move on to Galio. So now, passive cooldown scales with CDR and damage increased, E damage increased as well. So basically, they kind of changed the Colossal Smash, now meaning that you get a bit more damage in terms of, coming from that Colossal Smash, but also you're benefiting more from going into the mid lane and into the bottom side than having him as a top laner, because now obviously Colossus Smash will deal more damage and it will be up more often, and obviously also deal more damage if you have AP damage coming in from your build.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like it. They're doing, this seems to be the flavor of the recent patches, is trying to find ways to take the more obnoxious aspects of the kit out and then put the power in somewhere else. So Galileo, that was taking the flash away, or the flash taunt combo, which I didn't ever expect them to do that, but I'm glad that they have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's cool.
I don't know. I think it was a fun way of sometimes approaching Galio, but I can understand why you would want to do that. It's essentially a better engage than what Rakan had, and they also removed that.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, Flash by itself is certainly something which is, like, it's not exactly terribly easy to play around, in that you know that it's there and your reaction time is, like, pretty much instantaneous. I one point, I think I was really hoping they would take Flash out of the game entirely, but I mean, the thing that people always say to me whenever they say that is that the game is built around Flash being there. But I don't know. I think maybe it might just be better off without it, but I don't really understand the game enough to say that for sure.
I don't think the game should be built around Flash, but I can see what you're going with, Counterfeit. Overall, I would just say that I'm happy that they're giving more power over to mid and support Galio. I think it's way more interesting to watch those two than to watch top lane Galio, which we're not seeing anyway nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, they've got the Justice Punch getting a little bit of extra damage as well. I mean, it's not major. This is the whole patch is very, very minor changes to everyone. Like, I don't know if anyone's really going to notice that. I mean, I guess it's a little bit more wave clear, I guess you could argue.
Yeah.
But
yeah, a small light buff. But someone's also getting a light buff, Graves, which on his quick draw, which is his E, now will get a bit more armor. Not a lot, but a small bit. And I think overall, like, I like this change because I remember back when they first nerfed Graves, they took away a lot of his, like, Bruiser-ish nature. Because he had a lot of damage, but he was also just extremely broken when it came to to armor. So now they're giving him just, like, a slight buff again. And it goes back to what I said. Instead of, like, completely over-buffing someone or completely over-nerfing someone, just make those slight changes and work with the data that you're getting in.
I would say that it's worth bearing in mind how, like, I'm definitely not a Graves player by any means, but it's worth bearing in mind that this is per stack, and that Graves can stack this up to 8 times. Like, theoretically, I don't know how practical that is in an actual fight, but yeah, like, that seems like it's a pretty big deal. As much as, I presume if you're clearing the jungle, you're going to hopefully be trying to keep your quick draw stacks up for as long as possible. So I could definitely see a world in which, what we're looking at, 24 extra armor while he's clearing, which would seem like that's a pretty significant amount of
24, like 34
I was thinking 8 times 3.
Oh, sorry, 32.
Yeah, no, I can't math.
Yeah, well, anyway, yeah, I see what you're doing. Of course, you're going to have a lot of stacks with quick draw, and you can keep that up in the jungle. You can also use it when brawling. And overall, it just means that, like, you're still going to have the same amount of damage that the old Graves used to have, but now you're also going to have that dueling power. Like you said, it's a fairly big change in the minor department, so if Graves jumps up a bit in terms of priority, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Well, bear in mind as well, like, because we're talking about jungle clear, so that's that's going to be better for him, or at least it's going to be safer, because he's going to have more armor. But, like, in a team fight, you don't have usually that capability of just quick drawing over and over again, but you will get 2 stacks from dashing towards someone. Yeah. So that's still, just basically 6 more armor most of the time. So yeah, I don't know. Like I don't. Is Graves like played at all?
Not in pro play. It's very minor. It's not someone you see very often.
Okay, yeah, he's sub 50% win rate currently in Plat Plus in jungle. So I think he like this seems like a very small change that's going to probably
Yeah.
like push him up very slightly without really having
Mm-hmm.
any great risk of being he's now horribly broken. Ah!
Well, I think it might happen, but I'm not sure. Counterfeit. Let's just wait and see. Let's see what the data says. But Karma has also been changed a bit right here. You saw a gigantic buff to her in 9.13. Now she's getting some of the shield from her E reverted back down. So essentially, she loses 20 extra shielding power at max level, and you also lose a bit of ability power. So like, it's not a huge change. It's going to be fairly big once you start putting those points into her E. But even then, you still usually max your Q first, and then you go for the E. So once you get to the point where you're gonna start maxing that E, that like 5 HP difference in terms of the shield is not gonna make the biggest difference.
Well, Freak did have an interesting point to say about this, which was that she's now officially has been brought back to actually lower power than she was before she had the relatively recent changes, as in they've stripped her everything. So the whole thing he was saying was that she was actually good enough when she wasn't seeing any play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, if you look at the competitive performance of Karma, she's like, along with Yumi,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, of the sort of pokey, annoying, shieldy characters, she's really, really high up.
Yeah.
In terms of competitive play, and also because Karma, I think, also hits multiple positions, it doesn't really hurt. It doesn't really hurt. Like, I'm kind of surprised Yumi doesn't appear in this patch at all, considering that they're very comparable in terms of the win rate's almost the same. Their play rates and ban rate is almost the same as well. But I guess one at a time, maybe.
Perhaps, but that's just something that we're gonna have to wait and see about. But yeah, interesting stats that you're coming in with about Karma being good enough before she got changed. Kha'Zix, someone that we don't really see a lot of play with as well, getting a minor buff as well. It's 10 damage all throughout. I don't think we are seeing really any Kha'Zix play. We could. Let me try and see if I can find Kha'Zix over on op.gg. Like 49.56%, I think, in terms of play rate. Yeah, no, wait, that's win rate. Like, it's looking okay when it comes to solo queue.
Well, it's worth noting as well that his Taste of Fear, or Taste Their Fear, which is a very awkward name for his Q, is doubles up on isolated targets. So that's more damage on his kit than it looks like. I think there's actually, I'll probably be looking at the same things you're looking at. We're just checking what his current skill order is.
When you look at challengers, well, like, he has a 51% win rate. Like, I don't think he's super overpowered at all, but you're definitely right about it being a possible problem when it comes to the isolation damage. I don't think it's going to be that different. Really, if you were going to die to Kha'Zix, I don't think 10 damage is going to make that difference. You're going to die. You would have died anyway.
I mean, I think from what, again, Freak was the one I was kind of looking into for research on other people's research on the patch. Apparently, some people were kind of bringing his W more into his kind of jungle to keep his health up. But I think, presumably, if you can start hitting into the Q more quickly, because especially at level 1, you're getting 10 more damage. I think does that stay consistent all the way through? I think, yeah, it does. I don't know. I think if he can kill stuff quicker with the isolated Qs, then he won't need the health quite as much. I don't know, because you're saying his win rate isn't terrible.
It's not bad at all, but yet, I just think overall it's more QOL change coming in here for Kha'Zix.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, well, like we were talking about before with the Graves, like this is a just sub 50% win rate champion, so a small buff presumably is intended to give them that 0.5%.
Yeah, should make it go a long way, but only time will tell. LeBlanc E-base root damage increased. LeBlanc sees play in competitive as well, so I think when you actually think about it, like you're gonna get 50 more damage at level 5 on your E. It's like that is a huge change here to LeBlanc, especially when she actually sees play in competitive play as well. Like that's going to be something that could definitely shoot her up in terms of the champion pool coming in from pro players in priority.
Yep. Oh, I think you're right. Like, there's definitely stuff in here to try and encourage people towards playing some of the champions I think they want to see getting played. As we'll see very shortly, you know, there's iconic champions getting the small buffs here. It's worth noting that for the ethereal change, this is the root damage, so the second part of the ability. Though the tether radius is probably quite a lot larger than it has to be.
It's very long.
Yeah, it's much longer than you think it should.
It's basically like a Karma.
It's 925 range, which is crazy.
How many Teemos is that?
I think that'd be 9 Teemos, isn't it?
Maybe.
But like, yeah, because I remember, you know, when you play against her, you're like, why am I not out of range? Why can I not break this tether? It feels like you can't break it because it's such a long distance. So I don't know. I don't like her playing against her, but I suspect she's probably quite fun to watch.
Yeah, well, I definitely think this is, again, just to try, as you said, to encourage people to play her. It's going to be a big change, especially in those all-ins. And as you mentioned, it's hard to dodge that. And if she really wants to kill you, she will always have the ability to get onto you very easily with her W. It's like, it is a big change, and I think this is going to shoot her up in terms of priority in competitive play.
Yeah, I mean, she does tend to max E last, so she won't see some of this buff until quite a lot later on. But
it could mean that you change up the priority in terms of abilities. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's a fair try to do that nowadays, just to see how much damage you get if you get more in your burst.
Well, I mean, since we had the change for the chains revealing people, there certainly is more of an argument to be made for that kind of idea. You know, if you're against a team where that matters particularly much.
Well, I think that more or less makes it up for LeBlanc. So let's move on to Lee Sin, Mr. Hartnell. Q base damage increase. Again, one of those champions that they love to watch. It's not a huge change. It's like 5 overall. But it's a fair change, I do think. Like, it is a bit of damage, and it could mean that someone like Lee Sin could go more toe-to-toe with the likes of Graves.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, like, it feels like there's almost like there's another champion which you could make out of Lee Sin's kit, because I feel like his kit was way ahead of the curve in terms of where Riot were going to go with their champion design much later down the line. Because people love Lee Sin because his kit is interesting and lets you express yourself in clever ways. So anything I think that allows him back in is probably going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's also relatively restrained as well, like everything is in this patch.
Yeah. He's also an interesting champion to watch. So, like, seeing as this is, as we mentioned, a patch that I don't think it's gonna hit playoffs. Do you think it's going to be the playoffs patch? I think it might actually be, because we're heading into week 9 of every pro league. So they'll have like 2 weeks to adjust to this, right? No, 3 weeks.
I could be wrong. Like, I'm totally prepared to be wrong, but I seem to get the impression that was the case.
No, I think this should be the playoffs patch, because once you finish week 9, there's going to be 1 week of a break before we start. It's like it's the last of September that you have the LEC finals. So this week is start of August, then you have a week's break. Yeah, maybe 2 weeks break, but I think this should be the playoffs patch. So Lee Sin could see priority in playoffs.
Well, we've been on 9.14 for, say, the LCS for a couple of weeks, and each of the patches have been a couple of weeks so far. So I think we're probably about due.
Yeah, it would make sense, but Lissandra has fallen down in priority, so I don't mind seeing her a bit more. I think she's an interesting champion. There's a lot of ways that you can utilize her pretty well. I don't think she's very boring at all, actually. I think she is one of those champions that, if played correctly, will be a huge asset to her team. And giving her a bit more damage ratio on her R will definitely help her team a lot.
Yeah, like she does feel like she has a pretty clear identity with the whole anti-assassin thing.
Yeah,
you basically just build the Zhonya's into her kit and then call it a day.
Yeah,
and I think that's fine. I mean, she's not getting picked at the moment.
Yeah, she's just super good for setup as well. So I would love to see her come back. I think when you need encouragement, Counterfeit, I don't think giving her 15% more damage ratio is going to be the real way. Because she's not picked to do damage. She's picked to help you set up picks. But I could be wrong as well. 15% ability power is quite a lot moving into, let's say, laning phase. You have 2 needlessly large rods, and then already you have, 10 extra ADP? So that is quite a lot when it comes to poke, and she is good at poking.
Well, it's also on top of the damage she can do. I think it's quite easy to look at the health changes they've got there, and not notice that most of that buff is coming at level 1.
Yeah.
Like the health growth comparative changes, is really, really small.
Mm-hmm.
So I presume that they're trying to give her more ability to hang with the other mid laners in the early game. And I mean, maybe she's just that little bit more healthy that she can actually use her Frozen Tomb on other people more often rather than just using it as a defensive tool.
Yeah, wouldn't mind to see that as well. Lucian, another early game champion, which they have buffed a lot of here in this game, in this patch. Sorry, will get quite a lot more damage on his calling. So it's basically start is the same at level 1, level 2 you get 5 more, and level 3 you get 10 more. It's not a big change overall, but I feel like when it comes to you having that mid-game power spike, which essentially the level 2 item activation, which is the name of the game for League of Legends right now, that 5 extra damage could mean a fair difference when it comes to executing someone.
Well, it's also worth noting that for the color, this is bigger than it looks, because you fire more shots with each rank of the culling. So you 20 by rank 1, 25 at rank 2, 30 at rank 3. So with each bullet getting more damage, that's a lot more damage. Over in the later parts. I mean, it's as much as Lucian has got this identity as an early game kind of brawling AD carry, I think it's really cool, because I mean the culling's very, again, if we're kind of working from the assumption that a lot of these changes are being made to try and make the viewing experience for Worlds as interesting as possible, I think keeping the culling to be a relevant factor in the game, I think is a really good idea, because that's the high point for Lucian in the later game.
Yeah, well, I also think that a game where you can have Lucian active, an active part of it, will also be a good game always, because Lucian should always be an option for AD carry players to pick, because simply he is the definition of an AD carry that can shut down late game AD carries as well.
Yeah,
I just think it's healthy for the game to have Lucian in, so a bit of encouragement should be fine for me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how different it makes the later game for Lucian.
Also the mid game. I think the mid game is more important than the late game. The mid game is simply just where games are made or broken right now. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're right. Like I think it's going to be very, very noticeable around, like, the level 11 stuff, and yeah, way before we even get towards level 16.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of a champion that has power in the early game, which has to fall off as it goes on. Otherwise, they're obviously they're just way more powerful than everyone else. But if they've got power in the early game, they drop off later, but they have still got a way to contribute, even if their contributions aren't as major as they would have been earlier on in the game. And I think that's what this culling change hopefully will do for him.
Hopefully they should. You know what, Counterfeit? I think back on the good old days of Crit Lucian, back when I could, like in Season 4, when I was actually a fairly good AD carry, when I could play Lucian with a double Shiv item and go for the IE. That was back in the days when I was good. But then everything became about the mid game, and then I ended up fucking sucking. Sorry for swearing, but I just suck at the game
You
nowadays.
taught me bad language.
Well, I'm sorry, Peter.
I know, man. The only way I build my Lucians is with Luden's Echoes.
You're worse than me. But then again, you're also what, like Wood 4?
I proudly Iron 5. They made a new division just for me.
I peaked at Diamond 4.
Oh man.
Well,
Oh man.
you know what?
Speaking of hard rocks.
Speaking about champions that washed up players like me, should be able to play Malphite. Getting changes to Q and W. And I think they also changed him in the last patch, right? Not quite sure, because it was a gigantic patch, right? The last one.
Yeah, the Malphite has had quite a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth noting that the Seismic Shard is... I'm trying to make sure I'm getting this all right. It's not just a slow, but the slow is also stealing movement speed.
It is, yeah.
So that's that's more noticeable. It's the thing about the Malphite changes they've done is it feels really weird. It's that they've got this really archaic kit for Malphite, but rather than just changing his kit to something else entirely, which I'm pretty sure most people apart from Malphite mains are not even going to notice, because nobody's playing him. But rather than do that, they've just trying to make it so that his current kit works rather than just coming up with a new one, which it seems strange, but I don't know. I've got to, with these strangers, maybe I'll give them more a try.
I'm sure he's in the rework like batch at Riot, because his kit, as you mentioned, is boring and I don't know, I feel like you could definitely update it into something more interesting. Malphite has a very interesting character and a good backstory, and if you can update someone like Pantheon, who is more like generic, I feel like, then you can definitely update Malphite. Malphite is a goddamn mountain. How can you not create a very good character around a big mountain?
Needless. I've got a present for you, a gift, if you will.
Oh.
A 5-second remake on Malphite. Mount Malphite. He said he's a mountain. He's now Mount Rushmore. He can pass through terrain, and he leaves giant Mount Rushmore-sized faces in pieces of the terrain. And then, but you never know. Maybe that really is Malphite. Again, Mount Rushmore, Malphite. Sorted.
You know what? I think Malphite should embrace the old saying about throwing a kitchen sink at someone. And instead of doing that, he should just like throw a small mountain with a little waterfall at people.
Okay.
So basically, like a Mega Gnar Q, Q, and then just with a small mountain instead. Well, I'm not sure. How big is a small mountain actually?
Like a hill.
Do you think it's a hill? Because then we have small mountains in Denmark, but I don't think hills qualify as mountains.
Well, like, if we're talking about his kit, like his seismic shard thing, it's like question mark, exclamation mark, why is this part of his kit? It doesn't really make any sense. It's just like, it feels like just an ability that they gave him a long time ago because they didn't know what else to give him. And this W is like, whatever. I feel like his ult is literally the only part of his kit that people are even aware is a thing. Like,
it's the most interesting one for sure. But Is a small mountain one that's like 4 kilometers above the sea level? Because you have stuff like Mount Everest, which is like what, 1,000,000 miles above sea level. I don't know. Anyway, yes, change Malphite, rework him, and then we'll both be happy. Maybe Counterfeit. Maybe we should do that one time. I know you have a series going on, guys. This is a plug for Counterfeit. He has a series where he changes champions. I think it's called Champion Rework.
It's a champion design workshop, but it has a component of redesigning. Because right, I'll talk more about that later.
Maybe we should do an episode one time, Counterfeit.
Yeah, well, we can always do Malphite.
Exactly.
I mean, given his current kit, which is, it's just incredibly creaky, archaic kit. Like anything you put in is going to be an improvement. So it's a good candidate because you can't really be less good than the current kit.
Basically, but the Poppy getting a bit of movement speed to her W. Not a big change either. I don't know. I don't really feel like Poppy needs any buffs. I feel like she's actually in a fine place, but there's just tanks that deal more damage than Poppy and therefore are better than her.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see this making it. I mean, they even say in the patch notes, it's a tiny, tiny buff. Yeah, it doesn't change any circumstances in which you would have wanted to use it, etc., etc. You know where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
So whatevs. Like I know, there are some people who are big fans of Poppy. So I'm sure they'll appreciate that. But I'm kind of surprised that they didn't put maybe a little bit more in there, just to, because the whole thing of if a champion is perceived to have been buffed in a meaningful way, then people will play them. And it doesn't actually necessarily, that buff itself may not even matter, but just putting, if they actually want people to play her, then I would have thought they would have maybe given her some stuff that looked better than it actually was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's not going to be a big change. I think we can agree on that. Counterfeit. Though I would love to see Poppy back in the meta. I think she's so cool. I think actually she got played last week in the LEC, if I remember correctly. I think it was Visitachi probably. He's the big Poppy player historically in LEC. But moving on to Kiana or Kiyaha or whatever you want to pronounce it. I think
the first one's fine.
Yeah, that's fine for me. That's how I would say it. But I'm pretty sure there's multiple different ways of saying her name. But
I think Kiana's totally fine.
Yeah, that's the way I would do it. But Kiana, her E is getting changed, her W is getting a small change, but that's an ARAM. And R is getting changed as well, so it has a bit of a longer cooldown.
Again, if we're always keeping this with an eye towards patch 9.18, World's patch. I like that I haven't played anywhere near as much as Kiana as I should have. But I think the Audacity change that you can get away from it is sensible in terms of, again, you've got people who are coming to the game who are maybe even going to see it for the first time. And having an ability that does something counterintuitive, which is that, when she gets to you, you have gotten away, but you still take damage. Getting rid of stuff like that, which doesn't need to be there, I think is a smart move.
Yeah. I personally like the change to her R, because I feel like for a champion who relies so much on her ult, it shouldn't be up every 1.5 minutes. It really shouldn't. I feel like it should be just way longer in the early game, and now that is 2 minutes. And then once you get into the later stages of the game where you fall off, quote unquote, I feel like then you can start to give her more power into her R and open up for her to make plays that are more creative than just straight out bursting people. Yeah,
I think it's a relatively light touch for her. I'm just going to quick check in because I know that her win rate has still stayed pretty low, but I'm glad that in this case, it was made a point of people saying that they were glad they didn't knee-jerk buff her like they did with Yuumi, which was very, very recent. That they knee-jerk buffed. So they've let her kind of settle in a bit. And I think even if she's on the slightly weaker side, I think it probably... I'm just having a check, actually.
What are you checking, Mr. Hartnell?
Okay, yeah. So her win rate like when you're looking at people who know what they're doing with her.
So that's Challenger?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think she can be very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I think the games that I've seen her being played in LEC has been just extremely impressive. But again, it is Kiana. You have so many different ways of playing her. She's essentially like a Lee Sin with so many different ways of you expressing yourself. So again, just like going back to the R, I think when that is something that basically empowers all of your abilities, I think having that longer cooldown does mean that you have less playmaking potential. Or you at least have to find different ways of making those plays happen. Anything else to say?
well, I guess we'll see if she actually ends up getting played. I don't see it happening, but I'd be excited if it did.
Well, she is getting played.
Oh yeah, well, I mean post devs.
Okay, yeah. I think she can still be played, but I think there's like more interesting champions and more straightforward champions that doesn't really rely so much on their ult to get going. Rumble, Mr. Counterfeit, W shield decreased.
Yep. The only thing that really struck me about this patch was, this particular change was because I think Rumble is actually supposedly extremely good at the moment, and particularly at high level. That apparently Rumble mid is really good, but the note is that the Rumble shouldn't be able to shrug off early damage so easily. And then you look at this change, you're like, well, I don't think he's gonna max his W first. So taking 20 damage off the level 5 shield at max rank and 30 damage off the shield at max rank when it's empowered. Like, I'm not quite sure if I'm following the logic there. If the point of this change was that that it's supposed to be an early game nerf to then nerf his late game as well.
Well, I think 100 health being shielded is actually quite massive in the early game. It's like there's not a lot of champions that can so quickly take off 100 shield, and at least it's going to give you so much dueling power. Like I think it's actually a fair change, but I can follow your logic that perhaps they should have like made it scale towards the late game, so it could have been like they ramped it up by 5 or something like that instead of just taking out the entirety of the ability.
Well, you're right that it does matter a lot more early. I mean, you've got, especially the empowered shield has got 75% AP scaling. So, like, I don't know if I imagine it's going to be proportionally a lot less important anyway. It just seems, I don't know. I do think Rumble feels like he's one of those champions that could easily have a small update to make him a little bit more modern. But yeah, if he's getting the job done as he is, then fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think he's very high up on their rework list because I don't think he's that boring.
No, he's functional. He's definitely functional.
Exactly, compared to the likes of Malphite. Soraka, Mr. Counterfeit. Q base damage increased. They nerfed her a while back, taking away some of the damage from her W, if I remember correctly, and now they're giving her more damage back into the Q. They're saying, if you're running Ari on Soraka, we want you to use the Q, which is skillful to land and not to W.
Yeah, from what Freak was saying, the Q max seems like it's apparently was already the best way to go with Soraka, and now is just that much more incentivized. I'm gonna look back through. So it was back in 9.10. Yeah, they gave you more incentive to levels Star Call anyway.
Yeah, because they didn't want you to use the W, which is so easy to proc Ari with.
That's right. Back in 9.9, that was the cooldown change where it went up significantly, and also again incentivized you to level it to get its cooldown back down again. So I don't know, like, yeah, it seems like she's going to potentially be quite going back to. It seems, are we just kind of going in circles here? Like, if we're taking away the Equinox which of being incredibly annoying because you can't react to it with the silence, and just putting that same idea back on her Q. Like, but I guess it's better because you're not silenced, even if
Well,
it's the
well,
same.
her Q is harder or easier to dodge than the Equinox. It's
Yeah,
like I think it's just them saying that having to or poking with your W is obnoxious and not really, or it's toxic for the state of the game. So putting it on the Q instead, saying that at least you can dodge that, makes it funnier, so and so, to play against Soraka.
yeah. I don't know. Like, I did.
But
I mean,
overall,
she,
I just think Soraka is obnoxious to play against.
yeah, like, because I remember when they initially brought in her rework,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it does feel like her abilities aren't necessarily doing what you'd expect her kind of character archetype to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just seems really weird that whatever they're doing, they keep coming back to this idea of her being a lane bully, and it's like, what kind of character are you trying to make here? Like if this is supposed to be like a magical unicorn compassion character or whatever, like
It's basically Tom Kench without her being able to gobble people up. But she's there to save people instead of being a bully, right?
I think they probably, I think you're right that they probably need to change her kit around again to give her like methods of the thing is like so the example which I think of which is that in Dungeons and Dragons they had the whole thing that you had a cleric class who was just a healer,
Yeah.
and all you would do is you spend your turn saying I cast a healing spell, I heal my buddy for 5 6 whatever life, and
Mm-hmm.
that's her whole turn, and that's very like that. I mean it's somewhat rewarding, but you don't get to have a combat presence, so they changed it so that you to heal people you'd have to also hit things, so you would be doing less damage than anyone else would be doing, but you'd also be healing,
Yeah.
which is I think somewhat what they've gone for with Soraka, which is that you've got the star call gives you the buff and you can pass that buff to other people.
Yeah.
But
That's cool. But her W is just, I don't think it really needs to be in her kit. It's like
the Equinox, I'm assuming.
yeah, the dodge. Yeah, sorry. The silence. I don't think it needs to
Yes.
be in her. I don't think it needs to be in her kit. Like I like the idea about you being able to snare people, but I think what you could do is just make it function like, let's say, a Caitlyn W, so that when you step into it, you're snared. I don't think you need to silence people. I don't think you need to be able to deal damage to people with it. It should just be there to help you save your AD carry.
Yeah, I can dig that. Like her whole thing is sacrifice,
Yeah.
and like I think the Equinox is a bit of a missed opportunity in that it does have a useful utility effect, but it's very obvious it's supposed to be that the actually no, I know how to fix it. You just give it a cast time.
Hmm.
Like Equinox is currently instantly cast. If you do it so it takes a little, it kind of shows up as an area and then goes off. You then push it into being a defensive tool, which is, I presume, is what it was intended for. Which is that, if someone's coming after AD carry, you put the Equinox like slightly behind them, and so they run into it. If the enemy follows them, they either go round or they don't have access to their abilities.
Yeah. So
But
make it a Swain E, I think.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of does have that ready because it's got after 1.5 seconds it does explode. But I think the silence effect, I can I can understand why it comes in immediately, because if you have to wait for 1.5 seconds, then it's possible your AD carry's dead by that point anyway. But I hate silence as a mechanic, so I'd be all in favor of getting rid of it.
Yep, completely agree. Let's jump over to Swain. So Q range has been reverted from the last patch. So basically just putting 100 back to it. I didn't get to really see any Swain during the last patch, so I can't say if it like made any difference to him having 100 less bold range, but I can't imagine that it's big, really. But perhaps it is. They do say that apparently they saw more awkward situations with his Q.
Well, just going back to checking on it. So yes, this is 9.14 change. So just last patch. The being able to go through minions and things. Like, I don't know. I'm hoping that we're moving towards an area where Swain is a better champion to play with and against. So yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to do a lot of stuff where they're going to sort of try out certain things. So in this case, like taking the Death Hand range down had unintended consequences of making him feel wonky to play. So they've tried that. So now presumably, if he is problematic, they'll try something different. And yeah, I'm into it. Like I like sort of small like bounces backwards and forwards, especially if you've got a dedicated core of Swain players who are going to keep on testing this out thoroughly.
Yeah, well, let's just see where it goes, Counterfeit. But a change that I'm hyped about, Syndra. It's not a huge change. It's 5 extra damage and 10 extra damage. But personally speaking, I love seeing Syndra in pro play. I think she is a very interesting champion. She's a skillful champion as well. And just giving her a bit more of an incentive to go for those high and big plays, it's fine by me. Obviously, having more balls, or spears as they call it, the more damage you'll deal.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're looking at 4 spheres, but I mean that's still not terrible. Like 20 more damage, and then 40 more damage. I think that's going to be noticeable. I think I feel like Syndra's. You see a lot of the time with Syndra that that people get away with marginal, just about get away from her. So I think even a little bit more damage is going to be, the difference maker between did you finish the kill or not.
Well, and again, as I said, just it will incentive or give incentive to her going for big plays and to just have us see her even more. So I don't mind it. Wayne coming in. Vayne will now deal instant damage with her condemn and a bit more damage if you hit a wall with your target. So Vayne now has an execute, so and so.
Yeah, I mean this is a decent chunk of extra damage. I'm just gonna have a quick double check to make sure I've got the numbers
but
right
yeah,
here.
like Vayne, when you hit her, when you hit a wall, I think that's fine that you now deal more damage. I don't think it needs to be instant because that is essentially a long range tool to execute people when they're getting away from you. And I think Vayne as a champion should be someone that needs to be up close and personal. So I don't think having that quote unquote execute should be a part of her kit.
I was going to say that it's a solo queue thing of someone condemning somebody out of their range, but I suppose in pro play it's not going to happen because people know their numbers too well.
Well, in pro play they also use condemn as a way of landing that third hit. So now when you have that and you know how much damage you can deal, it will be it will be instant nowadays, and that could potentially turn into a way for you as an AD carry in pro play to kill your enemies faster and thus get that execute in. Or if someone is running away from you, suddenly you have that execute damage.
Yeah, like I don't know. I think it's going to be one of those things that will maybe get her to see a little bit more usage. I was looking at the bonus damage. I'm trying to make these numbers fit with each other. So I'm guessing it's going from currently it's you get 50 physical damage from the regular shot at level 1, which I suspect it's going to spend quite a lot of time at. And then if you get the extra bonus damage, I presume on top of that, would be 75. So I'm guessing this is going to be what? This is going to make me look silly when I can't do maths. I guess it's going to be about 25 extra damage or so? Maybe a bit more than that.
Well, that's again if you can hit the wall, and I'm fine about the idea about you having to hit a wall in order to get the extra damage. I just don't like it being instant. I think it should be once you hit the wall, or I don't know, once the shot connects.
I do think you're right that it seems like looking through the notes for this one, it's like that change is explicitly intended for allowing her wave clear to be a little bit better. That So if with that being the case, why does this apply to everything instead of just minions?
Yeah,
So that seems weird. I do agree. It seems like it may have unintended consequences because of that.
it may have. We're gonna have to wait and see. But now the last champion up here today, Seraph. Our range has been flattened, so now instead of like ramping up, you're just gonna have a huge range throughout the entirety of the game.
This is pretty major.
Yes, will it bring him back? I don't think so.
I I think maybe like that is a huge like what he loses in rank 3 range, which again like just doesn't matter. Like his ability to
Yeah.
influence other lanes, you know, from what I've when a very good Xerath makes best use of it, it's practically like a semi-global which you've got access to. I don't know, like
Well,
I could definitely see that being a pretty big thing.
well, for pro player, I just don't think he's gonna come in. He doesn't really fit the meta in terms of having to reach the 2 to 3 item power spike. You kind of want to have more items on him, right? You can go for those 2 items, but that means you're just gonna have a harder time scaling up. So like if you go for Ludens and Morello, you're not going to be getting that late game power spike, which you really aim for as a Seraph. Yes, it's a big change, and yes, it gives him crazy range, but I just think there's better mid laners like Karma, Lissandra, Syndra, if we have to talk about champions just present in this patch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think in a competitive environment, that ability to influence the map, like even if he does, he's going to continue to have whatever laning problems he does have. I can just see. I think it's probably going to be the kind of thing that will win 1 or 2 games because people are caught off guard by it because they won't be used to the idea of a Xerath who can, just walk slightly into the river, or like halfway down the river at least, and then suddenly start dropping arcane bolts on people.
Yeah.
Like, I think that will catch at least one team off guard because they'll be sort of aware that this is a thing, but until it happens and you see it happening and you're like, oh crap, I need to throw out my old assumptions as to what Xerath can do for a game, and B, he's basically everywhere on the map all the time. I don't know, like you could well be right. It could just not matter, but I'm sure somebody's going to try it, and I think it will probably work really well at least the first time.
You know what? My guess for whoever's gonna try it, if someone is gonna try it, I believe Crown over in LCS will do it, because I'm pretty sure he has bought out a Seraph in either the spring split or the summer split.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Note writing campaign.
Just do it. Just do it. But yeah, Counterfeit, I actually think that's more or less the end for this patch, because we don't want to talk about skins. Bug fixes is basically just QOL changes, and then they're removing the legacy cursor, but that doesn't really mean anything for you and I.
Yep, all about the new cursors. Actually, I'm so next level, I play with no cursor.
Do you play without a mouse as well? Do you play with like the dance pad that you can do for Bloodborne? No.
Well, you can do a dance pad for pretty much anything.
Yeah, I we've seen what like League players play with all weird kind of stuff.
Let's not push the video like that too
Yes.
much.
Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Obviously, Peter, they can find you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at where? What do they need to search for?
Counterfeit cast. No S at the end, just counterfeit cast. Hopefully there'll be some links in the description.
Yes, you can find them in the description. You can also find my links, which will be Daedalus casts, and all the same platforms, just with Daedalus casts with an S at the end. But thank you guys for watching, and obviously I'll see you alongside Peter next time.